Okay. All right, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for tuning in from wherever you are. We are excited to bring you another live webinar. If this is your first one, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Rachel, and I'm on the marketing team here, so I'll be your moderator for today's event. If you have any technical issues or concerns, you can send me a message in your Q&A panel. We've got another great presentation planned for you, and we'll be covering Ionic's advisory service. Giving today's talk, I've got Matt Netko. I'm sure you've met him before. He is the head of developer relations here. And joining us is Rolf Kautze. He is the VP of customer success here at Ionic. So we've also got two guest speakers on the line with us who will be sharing their personal experience with Ionic Advisory. So you'll hear from them shortly. And before handing it off for the presentation, I'd like to go over some housekeeping notes. So today's webinar is being recorded. We're going to share a link to the presentation after the event is finished. So you'll be able to revisit the content later and share it with friends, colleagues, and I'll include a link to the slides as well. Today's presentation is going to be about 30 minutes long, and then we're going to use that remaining time to answer questions. So to help us get through all of your questions, please submit them during the live event. So as they come up, just by using the Q&A chat box on your screen, and we'll get to as many as we can after the event. So with all of that said, I'd like to pass it over to our speakers for their presentation. Thank you.
Cool, awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. Yeah, and we thank everyone for taking a little bit of time out of their day to join us and to have a conversation. I know it's kind of one-sided right now, but like Rachel said, we'll open it up for Q&A. And I'm looking forward to what questions you guys might have. So like Rachel said, I'm the Vice President of Customer Success here at Ionic, Rolf Kautze. Kind of a strange name. If you ever do get if we ever have the pleasure of communicating and you butcher it, it's totally okay with me. I'm kind of used to having my name kind of said in all different ways. All right, so let's kind of start at a high level, right? So many of you probably know that Ionic is, at its very root, we're an open source web company, right? We have three primary projects. That's the Ionic framework, that's Capacitor, as well as Stencil.js. So these are three kind of big projects that the Ionic team has put out there. We have a lot of users. I'm hoping that most, if not everybody on the call today is a user or has played around with our open source technology. We have a lot of active contributors. These are people in the community that are contributing to our projects, making our products better, and they're not even part of the core team. However, we do still have a core team for each one of our open source projects. A couple years back, we launched some advisory offerings, and these advisory offerings were to help enterprises that wanted to build with Ionic, follow best practices, and make sure that they were set up for success as they built with Ionic, whether that be the framework, Capacitor, or Stencil.js. It also gave them the ability to get issues that they were running into kind of fast-tracked within the Ionic core team. Sometimes things do get found. Bugs is in software. Maybe someday we'll have software without bugs. That would be a great utopian future. But things do happen. And so when those enterprises find bugs, our advisory team can help them prioritize and get some of their additional features built into the framework. Ionic, as some have probably seen, also works on various solutions. So these could be native solutions that help solve really complex application needs, right? Like storage is an important one, or authentication is kind of a tough one. That can be a pretty big challenge to overcome, and we have some kind of plugins and things that just kind of fit right into your application that you can just use out of the box. And then we also have solutions to help build and deploy applications throughout the life cycle of an application. So it's really a platform to grow on, but we're going to be talking primarily today about Ionic Advisory, and that's part of that enterprise foundation there. Now, Enterprise Advisory, what we're talking about today is, Enterprise Advisory is a mix of ad hoc and kind of pre-planned engagements. And one thing that, Netco, is I was thinking about this webinar and talking with some of our customers and even some people that aren't customers, about advisory. I do kind of want to clear up what advisory isn't. I think that one thing that advisory isn't is an admission of shortcomings. Right. So I've had some like core decision makers at businesses say, my team is really good. I don't know that we need advisory. And that's awesome. I believe that. I think that everybody who chooses Ionic is a level up from
absolutely.
people, I mean, that's just maybe something that we let go to our head, but that's okay. But, it's more about engaging with advisory is about tackling that kind of common enemy we all have in the development life cycle, which is timeline, right? I run into an issue, and however long it takes you to resolve that issue competes against the timeline you're trying to meet. And so what we have done is we've kind of put together a recipe, and we've put together a way of turning those reactive things into proactive things so that teams can be more effective at meeting those timelines. Right. It's not an admission of, I don't know how to do it. It's hey, it'd be great if someone could at least show me a map to resolve this a lot faster. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Well, let's step back just a little bit. Let's talk about kind of the journey of an application and how advisory fits into this. Most applications, whether it's a new startup developing an application, whether it's a enterprise that's developing an application to increase employee interactions, or it's a company that's trying to increase their customer experience in some way. Someone decides, maybe it's a group of people around a table or out to dinner sometime, hey, let's build an app, right? Hey, everybody's got an app. We should have an app, right? They pick a team and they just kind of go. The smart ones, right? They pick Ionic, right? They say, hey, we're going to, part of the technology stack is to go with Ionic. And so they say, okay, great. So let's get into it. And they start building, and they just start designing and building and testing and repeating that process until they're ready to actually release. And then there's a big party, right?
This is my favorite part. Yeah.
This is your favorite part, right?
Of course,
it's really fun to release an app and then see that like install counter climb, right?
Absolutely.
I'm hope that everybody on the phone has had the opportunity to experience that, but it's really quite exciting when you get to that point.
Hopefully with some cake and streamers.
Maybe I don't know.
Champagne. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we'll get into the party planning business once we solve the no bugs problem, right?
Exactly.
Here's the problem though. Most of the time things break down at this design, build, repeat phase, right? And what ends up happening is you never actually get to that celebratory phase. And it's really sad. I have talked with organizations, I've been a part of organizations that run into such big issues that push the timeline out too far that the project just gets scrapped.
Yeah.
Nobody likes that. It's a terrible feeling. You've been there?
I have, yeah. Before I joined Ionic, actually, my last project I was on for about 1.5 years, and it completely collapsed, and the companies went under, believe it or not. So
this is terrible.
Yeah, it was rough.
Horrible.
So I was definitely that little guy crying there.
Little
for
guy,
sure.
that is you.
Speaking as a developer, or beyond that, anyone on the team, you feel that it stings.
Yeah. So we don't want that to happen. So what Ionic does is we partner with organizations to ensure a successful completion and ongoing maintenance of that application. Because applications are never done, they're never complete, it's never fully baked, in the sense that things change in the ecosystem that your app has to be adapted for. But I really don't, you can take my word for it. Netco and I can sit here and we can say these things all day long because we work here and that's what we're supposed to do. But we have a lot of customers that have engaged in our enterprise offerings and a lot of customers that take full advantage of our advisory services. And I'd love to introduce you guys to two of these. We're going to start with Laurent and Laurent. I said it correctly, Laurent Witt. And we're going to get him unmuted here. He's the COO and associate at Genesis. Now, fun thing about Genesis is not only are they a customer, someone who takes part in our services, but they're also a trusted partner of ours. And we actually did a really nice case study with them. We'd encourage everybody to go look that up on ionic.io, read about their case study. They design apps for other people, but they're also a customer of ours. So Laurent, are you unmuted? Can we hear you?
Looks like
I'm here.
Oh, he's here.
Perfect.
We got him.
All right,
awesome.
Excellent.
Okay, so love to ask you just a couple questions here, Laurent.
Yes, sure.
So what do you find kind of most valuable in working with our team?
Well, most valuable. Yeah, the main thing is we had direct and fast access to the expert team. You can interact with Ionic through Slack channel. It's easy. It's fast. You have quick answers. You can share, for example, some code snippets or share some documents, share some whatever you want. It's quite easy, but the main thing is you have a high level of expertise. You have people that are directly involved in the development of the framework. You have, yeah, real experts, and we are, as you said, Rolf, we are a select partner of Ionic. So I think we have, of course, we have a good knowledge of the framework, but for some specific things, we need some help, and this was great to have access to your teams.
Awesome. Yeah, we've really enjoyed working with you too. Are there any particular insights that the team gave you that ended up kind of really benefiting you guys or kind of speeding up timelines?
Yes, sure. For example, I have this precise business case in my mind. We worked for a French energy company. They asked us some very precise things about PWAs, so progressive web apps. Of course, PWAs are quite new. We don't have a large experience about this kind of applications. It's a very different way to develop. You can do something, you can't do some others. So we had very interesting feedbacks from Ionic teams. We had access to true specialists, and we saved some time and money, and it was very interesting to have Ionic on our side. And even for our own customer, it's much better to know that Ionic is working with you on this precise case. It's something new. It's something you can, like you said before, there are a lot of things you can do wrong, or even the project can collapse because you don't have taken the right way, the right path.
Yeah. So, I think that you might have already said this, but is that kind of what justifies that purchase of advisory services for your guys' organization?
Yeah, sure. In fact, it's mostly quite simple. It's quite simple arithmetic. You can have your own teams trying to find you the solutions to problems that Ionic teams have already solved. You can develop your own proof of concepts. You can, try to Google whatever you want, but you are spending a lot of time and money in that. And I think with Ionic, you can take the express way. If you have your own team struggling on something for, let's say, 1 week or even a month, and that with a few hours of advisory, you have a great solution. Yeah, it's just simple arithmetic, in fact. Awesome. So, long story short, it's just a kind of it's a good return of investment for us. We spend some money, of course, for this advisory task, but we have access to great advisory. We had it fast with of course, with the best practices of Ionic. So it was really great, in fact.
Well, that's great. And I look forward to continue partnering with you and to our next discussion. So Laurent and I, so we get to meet on a pretty regular basis. And sometimes we don't talk about Ionic. Sometimes it's about food and wine and, coming over to France and, not being here in snowy Madison. So, so thank you so much, Laurent. And that's great. So thank you for sharing your insights. All right. The next person that we'd love to hear from. So this is Matt Rhine, and he works for MedMutual, or Medical Mutual, if you're a long way of saying it. Matt, can you hear us? Let me see if I can get you unmuted. There you go, Matt.
Hello.
All right, Matt, love to hear your perspective. Kind of the same questions. You've been using Ionic for a while. What do you find most valuable in working with our team?
Yeah, for me, some of the same things as have been mentioned, but it's really for me that sort of in-depth and really almost historical knowledge of Cordova. And of course, I mean, the Ionic framework and that in-depth knowledge of that, but also just in dealing with Cordova and the myriad issues that you can run into using that tool. And so having people who have seen the problems as they've evolved over the years has been really helpful.
Yeah. Cordova is an old friend of ours. But yeah, no, the understanding that evolution, I'm sure, is really valuable. Are there any particular insights that the team has helped you with that's, you've seen, oh, wow, I'm glad I reached out to the Ionic team?
Oh, yeah. Actually, just last week, there was a significant upgrade to iOS. And to put this in context, I had not developed for iOS. I made the choice last Wednesday to start deploying to iOS. And on Thursday, a major release was put out for iOS, and it broke everything. I mean, so many things were breaking, and I had no idea even where to start in troubleshooting this. And so to be able to get onto the phone with the Ionic team and have them sort of walk through what was happening, really quickly identify here are the separate issues going on, and then what order to tackle them in and how to tackle each of them, so that I had a clear plan for how to move through those issues and get back on track was phenomenal.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. So if you think about like your organization engaging with advisory services, kind of how is that justified to your business leaders?
Sure. Well, it's sort of two-pronged. One is using AppFlow to deploy the application is something that I could myself or my team, we could spend tons of time just building that infrastructure and configuring, that the integration process and deployment process. So that right there is a lifesaver for testing, for deploying to clients. But the other piece is this iOS issue is a great example where in the past I've had those issues, and it would have taken me off of development for a week, maybe even 2, tracking down all those issues, figuring out what is my problem, what is a problem with, Xcode. And so having that expertise to take something that would have been like a week, I would estimate. And, as the lead developer, that's a lot of time, that's a lot of money for my company. So to take that week, cram it into about an hour with the advisory committee or an advisory team that's awesome right there.
Well, that's tough. I mean, if you have an issue that's going to take you 2 weeks to figure out, for most people, that's an entire sprint cycle. I mean, you think about it, like that's a good portion of your development timeline. Mm-hmm. And you just can't have that happening. I remember when Matt's issue happened a couple weeks ago, and it's so funny because we're a big Slack shop internally, and we communicate a lot through Slack, and so we always broadcast this customer's having a problem, and then what we do is after we focus on that initial problem, then the team always goes and says, okay, who else might that be affecting? So we always, because we have some information on our customers and we know what they're doing, so we say, okay, let's kind of ripple that out a little bit, and let's proactively try to reach out to people and that sort of thing. But we don't like that Matt was the nucleus, but it definitely helps other customers, and Matt will benefit from another customer being the nucleus of that problem too. Yeah. So Matt, thank you so much for your partnership with us. Really appreciate you jumping on today to share your insights. And we'll be talking to you on a touch base call soon here, I'm sure.
Awesome. My pleasure. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. So Matt and Laurent kind of pointed out, our goal is to make sure that, we're giving your teams back time, right? By expediting, a fix, like maybe you ran into a problem. That really speaks well to kind of the reactive part of it. But it's also, we kind of have come up with a recipe here at Ionic to make sure that, look, we got to remove the problems before they become a problem, right? I don't leave the gasoline and the matches in my kitchen and tell my 9, 5, and 3-year-old, hey, can you guys watch this stuff for me? That would be extremely irresponsible and could lead to a catastrophic event, right? And so we want to make sure that we've put together a recipe for success for our customers as well. And so what we do is we kind of look at sprint cycles, kind of common structures of sprint cycles, and we say, how does, what's up? How does, what can we do to step in front of potential issues, right? And so we might do architecture reviews, UX UI reviews, code reviews, app checkups, to just make sure that we're staying in front of issues that might come up and align these with particular phases of a sprint cycle. And then we have working sessions, which Matt talked about. Matt utilized a working session when they had a problem, and we jumped on the phone with them and we talked with them for a couple hours to really dive into the issue and get to the root of it so we could solve it. It kind of works like this. Here's another kind of simplified example, but very real. We had a customer that reached out to us and they sent us this error. They said, hey, I received this error. We looked at it. We said, okay, well, let's dive in a little bit deeper. And we said, well, let's narrow down what is the code that's creating this error. Once we figured that out, it might have been in the form of a sample app or just looking at their code in their application. And from there, we qualified, what are you trying to do, right? What are you actually trying to accomplish? And in this case, we said, it looks like you're trying to get, a parameter of some kind, to access to a query parameter. Is that correct? Customer got back to us and said, yeah, that's absolutely what I'm trying to do. And we provided them with code that included context for their original application. So now they're not trying to interpret someone else's solution into something that, is now theirs under their context. Right. They can actually just see the solution in context, right?
And that's my favorite part, Rolf, because, it's not just giving them an answer and then moving on, right? Yeah. Because as it goes with many things, but especially programming and software development, having that additional surrounding context and an overarching solution will help their team for the long term too. It's not just it may be a one-off example that you're giving here, but those being able to learn from that and level up your team through that experience is something that I think really is my favorite part about our Ionic developers that help out with this. Yeah.
And that's exactly right.
So
because we always explain, hey, this is why we would do it this way. We don't just stop at here's the answer.
Yeah, here you go and move on.
And the fun thing about this scenario is that we actually tracked the time on this and we did it all within less than an hour, right? So I don't know how long it would have taken this individual to Google the solution. Laurent talked about that, how, you can kind of get down the black hole of Google. And who knows if the article you're reading is 10 years old and that sort of thing. You actually get up-to-date information. We were able to resolve this within an hour. And we always follow that process, right? We review a sample of the problem. We make sure we understand the intent in the business case, because maybe there's a completely different way to do it that person didn't understand. We provide that feedback, and then we explain why that was important, with the hope that we can turn something that was a reactive situation into proactiveness, right? Because, this very old proverb, you teach someone to fish, or you give someone to fish, they eat for a day, you teach them to fish, they eat for a lifetime. I'm a terrible angler, so that doesn't apply to me. I would still starve.
Yeah, same.
But, it's the same type of concept.
Right. It's just being able to give them context and have them, level up over time instead of that, again, that one-off. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we really, we care about the developers that use Ionic. The great thing about an open source technology, that it really is about the community. And so being able to have that kind of deeper relationship with these developers and teach them and help them and learn from them even, is phenomenal. It just grows the community and makes it even better.
Yep.
So speaking specifically about our advisory services that are proactive, right? We do focus on some very proactive things in order to kind of remove the gasoline and the matches from the situation. And we align these with development phases of an application. So something like an architecture review, right? An architecture review is meant to look at the structure of your application and really the foundation of that application and make sure that things are ordered right? Like,
Yep.
you know, last night even, I was working on a personal project and one of our solutions architects looked over my shoulder. He says, "Why are you putting that there? Why isn't that in your, you know, your style?" Yeah, he goes, "You should probably create another file and put it in here because your roots and stuff are going to get all messed up." And it's like, "Oh, I didn't think about that." You know, so.
But that's a good point, because in the moment, what you were doing probably worked, right? But it's that long-term cruft that can build up.
Absolutely.
And when you're working on a team like that, and it's many Rolfs, not just one, that can lead to disaster over time. And by the time that happens, it's somewhat too late.
Right.
Or it's just like I was wrapping up my hose for the winter, right? And it's a tangled mess. It's the same thing where if I had not let that get curled up and tangled little over time in little knots, if I had addressed them one by one as they happened, it wouldn't be in a mess that of my own doing. So.
Yeah, the other one is a code. You know, so an architecture review, you know, we meet with a customer and we talk with them for about 2 to 3 hours, and we look at the code shoulder to shoulder. Whereas a code review, we actually get access to the project and we do a full write-up, and we look at, you know, okay, where might tech debt be introduced right here, and what is the plugin situation, right? Or is it following solid principles? You know, this doesn't happen every single sprint cycle. You know, this might happen during the build or test phase, maybe twice a year, maybe every quarter, because it's very invasive and it takes a lot of time. And most of the time your project doesn't change that much. But this is a nice way. It's like an insurance policy of getting yourself really checked out, a formal exam of your code to make sure that things are going to continue working the way that they should.
Yep. My favorite one there is looking at plugin optimizations and compatibilities, because over time you might not realize that there's a new web-based feature that could replace a native plugin that'll help with memory management, improve the performance just by removing that code or all that kind of stuff. And that's what the experts on our team stay on top of, so that all these industry changes, you talked about iOS updates and operating system updates. It's really hard to stay on top of that stuff, but that's what our team is dedicated to doing, so that you can focus on just building your app and your business. So
it's things.
I love that part of it.
You know, it's things like, I think recently the open source version of the secure storage plugin now crashes on, what is it, iOS? What is the most?
What are we on now? 13?
Yeah, whatever. There's some problems, right? There's some problems, and if we did a code review of a customer, we noticed that, we say, hey, you're going to have some problems on these versions of devices, you know, we should get this updated. UX UI reviews are, you know, we at Ionic pride ourselves in the design of Ionic components. And so we have someone, our chief design officer, he's also co-founder of Ionic. You know, he is obsessed with the latest and greatest design paradigms, right?
Yeah. That's putting it lightly.
Yeah, that's putting it lightly, right?
Yeah,
so
the
thing is like he is up to date on where things are moving and what's going to make things look cutting edge. Organizations aren't always up to date on those things. So having a UX UI review where we can review some of those newish, you know, the new stuff that's coming out and the new ways to put applications together that work with the particular form factor. These are nice sessions where you can just kind of do a quick run through, a couple hour run through of your application and say, hey, is there things we could do to really modernize the look of this and add to the exceptional design that an organization might already have. App checkups is kind of like going to the doctor on a regular basis, right? You've already done a code review, you've done an architecture review, we already have notes on what needs to be done, and we can look to see like what has been done, what didn't quite make, you know, this release, and we just kind of give it a clean bill of health, like, ooh, this might be something we want to do next time, or ooh, hey, this plugin is going to choke when you do the build process and app flow and that sort of thing. So these app checkups are really short, kind of quick engagements where we kind of just run through the application real quick on a pointed basis. And then working sessions are reactive stuff, right? So when you have a big issue, you have something that's going on and you need another set of eyes, a wall to bounce things off of, we jump on a call and we work with organization on these. And then Laurent mentioned Slack channel, right? Yeah. Like we for our enterprise customers, they'll purchase a Slack channel and they'll have direct communication with the solutions architects and solution consultants on my team. And we talk with them, we share code, we send files back and forth. We have very casual conversation that keeps it working, right? It's not too formal in that way. They're all good people. It's fun to have conversations with them. They're like-minded developers. And so it's just a real nice way to have that conversation and just get things done via the channel.
Yep. And so much of development too is just being able to bounce off ideas and strategies and talk through things. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've been stuck on something for minutes, hours, what have you, and then I go talk to someone, and even just verbally explaining that has led to that eureka moment. So that's many aspects of the Slack channel aspect, but that's a huge part of it for sure.
And really, as we kind of wrap things up here, that's really what Ionic Enterprise Advisory is supposed to be about. Whenever you engage with us, you're always going to come out with one of three things, right? You're going to come out with a suggestion on where you should go look, right? As well as we're going to go with you on that journey, right? It's looking at the right forms. It's looking at the right documentation. It's not just looking at the 2 billion results you got on Google, on your Google search. It's about, hey, this is where I've seen something similar to this issue. Let's go look at this together, right? So you're going to get a really good qualified suggestion on what you can do, which decreases the amount of time you're going to spend investigating that issue. Maybe you did find a problem, right? You're getting an error. You've been beating your head against the wall. My team is beating their head against the wall. And it turns out it really is a bug. Well, our advisory team takes ownership of those bugs and we report them to the core teams of our open source projects, and we make sure that at least a workaround is developed so that you guys can move forward, right? And you're not just in the list of GitHub issues, right?
Yep.
And then lastly is the advice, right? Is we've seen this before, this is how it should be done, right? Here's a sample application with context to your own code. Here's documentation on exactly how this should be done. Let's jump on a working session and let's actually go through this and design this together. Yep. And that's it. I mean, it gives you something to move forward with in order to decrease the amount of time you're spending, so that you can meet your timelines.
Yep. Going back to the contextual aspect that we talked about before, the sample application part I think is really crucial here. I've seen the applications, and as someone that builds Ionic apps for all the different types of work that I do here, that is having that context of the full app is so crucial than just having from the online world small snippets that are totally irrelevant or not related to your context of what you're building. Is just cannot be understated how impactful that is.
Yeah. All right, so I'd love to hear some questions from folks on the phone. If you do have any, please feel free to submit them in the chat box.
Yeah. All right, we'll take a look here. So let's see. First one. Does Ionic provide any training? Mr. Rolfe, what can you tell us about that? Or any aspects of that as part of advisory?
Good question. I actually had a slide that I removed from here, but I think I kept it in the deck. Let's see here. Yeah, so we actually do provide training. This is an in-person kind of Ionic 3-day training where we will either come on site. Some customers will choose to have us on site, and some of them will do this remotely. And from within those 3 days, we develop a full Ionic application. We can't go too much. Anybody who's brand new to Angular, we're not going to dive into that part of it. You have to have a basic understanding of Angular. But we do kind of start from the very beginning, and we create a full application with the team. so that they can understand what are the best practices for setting up your environment, for structuring the application. Here's how you use the component library, all the things you see listed on the screen. And we even go into like, and here's what's coming next, right? Here are some of the trends we're seeing in the industry. So we do provide that training. Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks.
And what's great about that too is because Ionic apps are web apps, you're really getting the full gamut of Angular or other frameworks in there, as well as Ionic's technology, all of which is not proprietary.
Yeah.
So being able to learn from that is just so powerful, because those kind of skills as a developer will extend far beyond you know, just Ionic development. It's all web. So yeah. Cool. We got another good question here. Any rough numbers they can provide to start with in terms of how we charge? Do we go by the hour or a la carte style? Great question, Andy. Thank you.
Yeah. So how it works is we will sell advisory in either sets of hours or in like number of meetings, right?
Okay.
I can't speak to the specific numbers, so I would encourage you to reach out to our sales group, and if you mention this webinar, it'll get fast tracked. But you know, it really comes down to the type of project you're working on, you know, how critical or how fast is your timeline and that sort of thing. And we come up with a good package that works for your organization and for your team.
Yep. Okay. And another question here. Do we provide any assistance with implementation of Ionic's native solutions? So that's your Identity Vault and SSO solution, Auth Connect, we talked about before. I think that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, so the other thing that our advisory team does really well is because we're part of the team that designed those solutions. If you purchase one of those, we can actually walk you through the best practice of setting up authentication, whether that be with ADFS or that be with Amazon Azure or any type of Auth0 based authentication. You know, with secure storage, that might be, you know, Couchbase integration, that sort of thing. Our team can help with those processes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. I think that is all for our questions today.
Cool. Yeah, I think we gotta be cognizant of time here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So well, if you do have more, we encourage you to check out our forums or to email sales@ionicframework.com. We'd be happy to answer any questions that we didn't quite get to. And if we didn't get to one of your questions, we can provide an email contact back to you to make sure that your question does get answered. Or at least we can point you in the right direction.
Great.
So.
All right. Well, on behalf of everyone at Ionic, again, we're Matt and Rolf, and thank you so much for joining us today, everyone.
Thank you so much.